Welcome to Mrs. Peach Thrifty Living. I'm so happy you're here today. I hope you enjoy what I have for you today. This was a practice of me talking to our ladies at our church, a testimony of mine, and I hope you enjoy it. It is a lot of heart-wrenching life. I've been wanting to practice this video for a while, and I think this is the day I'm gonna try it. I may have to change it a lot. I want to see how much I can say in a short period of time. That's hard for me. As most of you know, I was born and raised in church my whole life. My mom and dad took me as a newborn baby, and I went my whole life. Went to the same church till I got married. But when I was, I always thought I was a Christian. But at 11 years old, and of course I prayed before that time too. I'm sure but at 11 years old, something happened at school. I passed out. I was in the front of the class, and I was standing there, and I think I was reading a science book or something kind of gory, or something that kind of scared me. And I fainted. And I don't know, anyway, I came to. I don't know if that might be the first time I ever passed out, but I remember hearing one of the teachers said, wow, she could have hit her head, and it scared me. And so when I got home that night, I laid in bed and I thought, if I would have died, would I have went to heaven? And I thought, I got to go in and ask my mom and daddy to pray for me and pray with me that I can accept Jesus as my Savior. Well, like I said, I've always prayed and been raised in church and thought I was a Christian. I can't tell you, the beginning and the end. Some people say there's an age of accountability. I can't tell you all that. I may be different for everybody. But 11 years old, I went in and asked my mom and daddy, and of course they prayed with me. They're godly people, always praying and always in church and serving the Lord and doing what they knew to be Christians, reading the Bible. We had family prayer in our house every single day. So I prayed that night and asked Jesus to come in my heart. Let me tell you, that was it. It looked like the skies were brighter. Everything was different. It just seemed like nothing was the same. A weight that this little girl had carried on her heart was no longer there. It looked like I said, the sky was brighter. Fast forward, I still live my life, and I went on to ask Jesus to. I wanted, we wanted to be baptized in the Holy Spirit, so I prayed for that. I prayed every time the altars were open. I was up there praying. I always knew I wanted to marry a preacher, and that was my dream. We always sang together and did those kind of things, and of course you could picture yourself doing all those things. So at 17, I had just graduated from high school, and there was this young man that was at another church, and we heard he was a preacher, and he was preaching that night, and he played the piano and sang, and we went. Okay, well, somehow over a little short period of time, we was able to get our youth leader to have him come to our church, and that was in the summer. And we started going together and got married in December. Fast time. Now, this man loved Jesus, but he had a lot of problems. So I'm not going to dwell on that, because this is my testimony, not his. but my marriage was a tough in many ways. But we went on to pastor little churches, and the grass was always greener on the other side of the hill. And we moved and we started churches. We sang together, and he preached. He had a lot of charismatic, and he was a great preacher. Very interesting. If you met him, you'd like him. Okay. So, like I said, it was not a bed of roses. And we moved all over the country. And after we had been married 11 years, we had been pastoring a church here, not too far from here. And he decided to go in the Navy. 11 years, mind you, we had been married. And so he took this test and got special permission because we had 2 children, and he went in as an E3. And so thus began our moving with the Navy, not just the ministry. So he went to boot camp, and then he went to Millington, Tennessee. We got to go there. He had a schooling there, and several places we moved in the Navy also. And then when we were in Maine, he was aboard a ship. No, he was not aboard a ship. He was the air part of the Navy. So he had joined his group, his group that he was with, and he had went to Spain. He came home and told me that he had fallen in love with another girl. Of course, that's devastating. And somehow, we went to church there. We didn't pastor there. We had lots of problems. And I'm not going to go into all those problems, but he fought those things in his life that just was so hard for him. And he just couldn't seem to overcome many of them. But we had counseling, and we ended up staying together. We never did separate. And eventually he got out of the military, and we moved back to California. And God just healed our marriage at that time, and it was just so good at that time for a little while. He even went to beauty college, and there's ladies all around. I could have been as jealous as could be, but I wasn't. And God just was there. I don't know how to explain it, because you look back and you say, how'd you do that? I can't tell you, besides Jesus was there with me every minute of the way. And of course, you call on him, you pray, he's there with you. Anyway, so we ended up pastoring another church, moving up to another area, and we was pastoring a church, and all of a sudden, the grass got greener for him. He thought, another lady. Well, that's the time he brought me home. Me and my 15 and 17-year-old children to my parents. He went back up and moved in with her, resigned the church. Yeah. But you know what? In all of that, God was with me. I look and I think of all the things he did for me when I was, first off, I don't know that I ever wanted for him to come back. I didn't know what was going to happen. I never did have a career. I sold Avon. I worked at stores. I worked at convenience stores. All those kind of things. Never anything of substance that would make a living for you. But let me tell you, there was so many miracles once I got here. And the first one, well, I knew that I wanted to have my children in church. They'd already seen enough hypocrisy and so many things in their life that should not have been there. But we ended up going to our church right here. And since we had been pastoring a church, I felt like, oh, let me go back and say, when I got to church that night, we tried another one that morning. That was nice, but we got to church. I'd heard about this one. And when we got to church that night, there was Sister Hood. We sat right behind her. And this was during the time, it was in the 80s. And our church was just booming at that time. The band was fantastic. And it was like a breath of fresh air to my weary soul. I needed that at that time. I really did, because we'd been going through a lot. My kids too. And you know, we was at Mom and Daddy's. They was so kind and welcomed us into their home, and the miracles was a beginning. And I kind of jumped over. I decided I needed to talk to the pastor there because we loved it so much. Went in and kind of gave him a little bit of what we'd been through, where we came from. And that day he said, if you need anything, if you need money for your first month's rent or whatever, we'll be here to help you. They didn't know me, and they did that for me. I left there with, he gave me $50 that day. And just one thing after another after that. Like I said, we didn't have a home. My mom and dad had built this home that I live in now as an idea that someday they might move here. It was a smaller house, and they thought when we get too old, we'll have a smaller house and a smaller yard and all that. And they had it rented out. And she said one day, she said, if that house was empty, but they'd just signed the lease, the people that lived here, for another year. And she said, if it was only empty, you could move there. And wasn't many days after that, the man that rented it said, would you mind if we got out of our lease? Something had come up. And they said, no, we wouldn't mind at all. So there was me and my children, a house to live in. I needed a car. Gordon had a little car that his dad had given him, and it got around. Of course, not the best car in the world. Well, I needed a car. Mom and Dad. Mama never did drive. And Daddy had bought a new car. And he always bought a brand new one. Paid cash for it, by the way. And he just didn't have the heart to get rid of that old one, because he'd carry out the trash and all those kind of things where he wouldn't mess the new one up. So they gave me, I should say sold me, because they are the type of people, they didn't just give you everything. They rented the house to me for so cheap. I don't even remember what it was, but it was really cheap. And they sold the car for me really cheap. And I went right up. Mind you, I had worked at McDonald's several places before. And so I knew I could work at McDonald's. So I went up there to see if I could get a job there. And some of them didn't want to hire me because I was older. I was in my, I think, mid-30s. You know, they hire a lot of younger people, or they did at that time. But the manager the owner seen my application, said, hire her. So I had a job. And so I had money coming in that I could pay my little teeny rent and pay for my car. And, you know, we lived very frugally. And Gordon got a job at McDonald's, and eventually Gail did. She was a little young at that time. So just God provided for us all along the way. And, you know, we just felt his presence there the whole time. And then fast forward to meeting Richard, and you guys know him. Many of you do. And I had always said I wanted to marry a preacher. Well, I was married to the one. He was a good preacher. He had a lot of good things about him, but a lot of things not. A lot of things not so good in his life. Okay, let's see. So, I do want to add in there that he did eventually, through a lot of struggles in his life, did marry a beautiful lady, and it was wonderful. He never did get back in the ministry. I know that was a sad thing for him. He just, it just never worked for him. So, but he married a beautiful lady. I have to tell you that. And after I met Richard, and they moved out here. Richard said, let's just have them all come here for the holidays. They was living with Gordon and Lynn at the time. And we had them over. I will say it was a little awkward at first, but as the years went by, it was comfortable, very comfortable, and God was good to us. There's so many things it's hard to forgive, but God can help you. Anyway. Let's see, where did I begin? Okay, I was telling you about Richard. Well, I always wanted to marry a preacher. Well, Richard loved the Lord. He really did. He had a lot of struggles in his life before. That's his story to tell. And some people said, do you want to marry him? He'd been married before. Well, anyway. So I married him. We was almost married almost 40 years. I can't tell you it was a bed of roses. There was little ups and downs, but nothing to rock the boat. Let me tell you, he loved Jesus. He would tell anybody about Jesus, and he wanted everybody to know how much he loved the Lord. And so, God was so good to me. The most of you that are here probably know that Gail married a minister, and they went to Bible school here, and they youth pastored and pastored a church, and their two children, Caleb, is a worldwide minister, travels all over the country and into other countries and preaches the gospel. I think at this point he's a numbers guy, and it's I believe over 1 million people that's come to the Lord. More than that, they do the count, and our granddaughter, their daughter, pastors a church. They pastored a church, and they just now resigned from their church, and now are going to be evangelist and music. She's a music writer and worship leader, and he preaches wonderful, and God has been so good. The legacy goes on. Now, with that being said, Gordon, he's always loved the Lord and served the Lord in their church, and him and his beautiful wife, and our granddaughter is serving the Lord and raising her family in the ways of the Lord. And, we ended up having Josh. Surprise, surprise. Caleb, our grandson, was 11 months old when I found out, when I had Josh. And God gave us Josh, and I'm so thankful. We just pray for him every day, and he loves his mom and dad, and he's always telling us how thankful and how blessed he was to be raised with a family that didn't have all the problems that his friends had. He had his one mama and one daddy, and I could go on and on, but let me just stop here and say, I love all of you. I love my church family. They have been, every one of them, I feel a connection to everyone that I ever had a little talk to. I love to get around and shake hands with everybody, and I want to spread the love of Jesus. And I want them to know that I love Jesus and I love them too. And Jesus has been so good to me. With all that said and done, I mean, I just celebrated my 80th birthday. God's kept me in good health. And then all of a sudden here, just after Richard passed away, he passed away in August 2022. And in October 2022, I started this YouTube channel. Who would have ever thought that? I never dreamed of that. And, you know, I've always wanted to play the piano and sing for people, and not for the glory of myself, but for Jesus. And I can do that. You know, there's an audience there. And people write to me from time to time and tell me how much it touched their heart and how they want to serve the Lord, and I can pray with them. Okay, I can go on and on. I've been known to do that. So I'm going to stop right here, and I just want to thank you, every one of you here. I love you all. I can get very emotional about that, and just let you know how thankful I am that I love Jesus and Jesus loves you.